Hello, and welcome to School to Homeschool. My name is Janae Daniels. I'm a wife, a mother of 6, and a former middle school teacher turned homeschool mom. I have kids in their 20s all the way down to elementary age and everything in between. Are you thinking about pulling your kids from the public school system like I did, but you are scared to death and don't know what to do next? My friends, I felt the exact same way, and you have come to the right place. I want to help your family leave the system so that you can take the hearts and minds of your children back. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Now, today's episode might be a little bit shorter, but it's been on my mind and I want to address it. And that is, are you feeling guilt or are you feeling a fear of missing out? What do I mean by that? Well, let me share. One of the anxieties that I had when I pulled my kids, and even as I was thinking about pulling my kids for that 2 minutes, that I was thinking about it because I knew something had to be done, and I felt like I was being guided to do what I did, was this idea that my kids would miss out on all of these wonderful things. They would miss out on prom, they'd miss out on homecoming. My little daughter, who was still in preschool, would miss out on kindergarten. They'd miss out on field trips. They'd miss out on class parties. They'd miss out on all these things. And how sad that they'd miss out on all these things. I even saw a mom post in Facebook, we're debating, I feel guilty because we want to homeschool my daughter instead of sending her to kindergarten. And she's going to miss out on all the kindergarten things. And so today I want to briefly talk about that. Again, like I said, it's going to be a shorter one. Next week is a little bit longer, and we've got a very sensitive subject that we're going to talk about, but a doozy of a subject. So stay tuned for next week. And for next week, you're not going to want to have little ears listening. You're going to want to listen to it with headphones on or when you're in the car alone, but you're not going to want to listen to it. But this week, let's talk about the fear of missing out. So last year, there is a girl that I know she's 18 now, turning 19. And she was about to go into her senior year. And I had talked to her and her mom and dad about the school system and things like that. And they ended up actually pulling a couple of their kids. But she technically could graduate right then. If she were homeschooled, she had enough credits, and I use that loosely because there's not actually a standard in my state. It's based on, at least in the public school system, it's based on what the school district deems the minimum number of credits needed that they work with the Department of Education on, but there's not like a set standard, like you have to have this X amount of credits to graduate. And most school districts that want to be competitive have more credits required to graduate so that they appear, in my opinion, so they appear rigorous and academic and all that stuff. So I asked her, she's like, well, part of me just wants to be done so that I can really focus on my music and focus on the things that I really, really want to accomplish and get done. And the other part of me doesn't want to miss prom or some of the pep rallies that happen in the spring because we do all of these cool things with the school. And this is the school that my kids would have gone to for high school. And so I said, okay. And so ultimately, she ended up going to school. She didn't go a full day. She went most of the day, but she didn't go a full day because she had to, quote, finish the last credits for the school. And then, she finished out the year and she did all the things and she did the prom and she did all the pep rallies and she did all the things that she was really afraid of missing out on. And I asked her in May, I asked her at her graduation party, was it worth it? You didn't want to miss out on all those things. Was it worth it? Was prom worth it? Were the pep rallies worth it? Were they worth that extra time? And she's like, oh, I knew you were going to ask me that. She's like, and I've thought about that a million times in the last couple months. She said, it wasn't. It was a letdown. And I lost all that time in exchange for a couple hours of prom because I was afraid I was going to miss out. And now in hindsight, I wish I would have just been done and spent all the time working on the things that I really, really wanted to work on. And her parents would have let her, like they let her, they're to that point that they're like, yeah, what's best for the child. And at that age, what do you want? And she regrets it. She regrets the time wasted on such trivial things. And so I think about that. I think we get this idea, we feel guilty that our kids are going to miss stuff. But when you think back to your time at school and how much time you spent there, and by the way, the average is 16,380 hours spent in school from K through 12. 16,380 hours away from family, 16,380 hours doing what somebody else tells you to do. No wonder. Yeah, they produce workers. John D. Rockefeller got his goal. He got his wish. Let's create a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. That's a lot of time that you can condition a child to do something, right? It's a lot of time away from family, which is no wonder that we are experiencing this phenomenon with peer orientation versus parent orientation and a loss of attachment with the family. This is a recent phenomenon in the history of the world. It's a recent phenomenon. If you have not watched my interview with Tamara, my first interview with Tamara Stryjak, where she talks about attachment and getting the hearts and minds of your kids back, I would suggest you listen to that. I also discussed this in an earlier episode where that idea of socialization and peer is problematic, right? But this whole notion that we should be in school, 6 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 180 days a year for 13 years is a recent phenomenon in the history of the world. And our children are separated from their families for the best hours of the day. And then they get home and then they work on more school and more homework. And then they have extracurricular activities. That number is actually far bigger, being separated emotionally and intellectually in all the ways, and sometimes physically from their parents, which I think has been damaging to us as a society. But we've also been conditioned over the last, none of us have experienced life pre-compulsory education, because that was 1852 when Massachusetts was the first state to institute a compulsory education law. And even back then, they weren't in school as much as we are today and adding more time in school, not less. Like they want to add more time in school. The government wants to add more time, not less. And so we don't know what it was like prior to that. But yet when we look historically, families were closer. They were closer in proximity, and part of that had to do with transportation, like in communities, but they were emotionally closer. Their ties were closer. They knew their family. And I would venture to guess that they were probably healthier emotionally in a lot of ways because they were closer to their family, because they had, they were parent oriented and relied on their families, and they were less reliant on the school and workers and things like that. So I've thought about this because I also had a fear when I decided to send my now 8-year-old to kindergarten. When I pulled her, she was 4. And I really, really struggled with, do I send her to kindergarten or do I keep her home? Part of the fear was that I couldn't teach her to read. What if I couldn't do it? What if I failed at teaching her to read? The other part was that my 3 of my kids had the same kindergarten teacher. And I'm going to give a shout out to her. Her name is Cheryl Gibbons. And she was the most fantastic kindergarten teacher. And I would wager one of the most fantastic teachers I've ever seen. And I taught school. She just did the coolest things with the kids. And she took them on cool field trips. And Miss Simon, her assistant, equally is phenomenal. Phenomenal. There we go. Just incredible things. They taught them. She was heavily phonics based. She taught them the letter people. And when she wanted to teach like Q and U, getting to, that they have to be together, she did a wedding for them, so that the kids would remember the Q and U stay together. And just a phenomenal teacher. Taught them, just did cool things. At the end of the year, she did, for Mother's Day, instead of having the kids make a Mother's Day craft for the moms, she'd have the moms come in and they did a whole program singing to the moms. And then they did for us, they pampered us with a spa day, and she got lotions and they rubbed our hands and feet, and then they put makeup on us from makeup samples that parents had donated over the years. And she's just phenomenal. The year that Kara would have been in kindergarten was going to be her last year. And I knew that because I had kept in touch with her. And I thought, my friends, I cried. That might sound stupid, but I cried thinking she's going to miss out on all those things. She's going to miss out on the wedding of Q and U. She's going to miss out on the Mother's Day songs, and she's going to miss out on all the field trips, and she's going to miss out. And how sad for her that she's going to miss out. And then I had this realization that I was going to miss out, and she was going to miss out on me. She was going to miss out on time with me to grow and become close. And we throw them into kindergarten at 5. They're still so little. So I chose to keep her home. And I don't regret that. And there's a couple reasons that I don't regret that. She didn't learn to read until 7.5. Last year is when she started reading. Like August, September. She couldn't read. Struggled with phonics, struggled with sounds, struggled with the letters, couldn't remember the letters. Nothing seemed to click. And then all of a sudden, everything clicked. And I did, she's one that I read with. And I did subtle, gentle phonics with her. And then she learned to read. Now, and all at once she learned to read. I didn't do rigorous curriculum with her because I knew that I knew her well enough to know that wouldn't work for her little heart and spirit and the way she learns. So I was very gentle with her, but I really was concerned that she wouldn't be able to read. And then all of a sudden she couldn't read. And then boom, when she was emotionally ready, she read. She just started reading, and she's a good little reader now, and we're reading chapter books, and she's simple chapter books, but you get my drift. It took some time. And I think about if she were in school and that time was away from me, she would have been labeled as learning disabled. They would have probably had to put her on an IEP. They would have had to do all these interventions because she couldn't read. She couldn't recognize and retain the letters and the sounds and all the things. Um, and she would have had a label for the rest of her life that she was dumb. Because kids pick up on those labels really fast. I did. I still remember in first grade being in the middle reading group and not being smart enough to be in the highest reading group. Like, I remember that. Kids pick up on those labels, even when they change the name of the reading group from, the highest reading group to the kangaroo reading group or whatever you want to call it. Like, kids are not stupid. They pick up on those things. Well, Kara didn't get any of those labels. She didn't. She knows she's smart. She knows she's capable. And she has none of those labels. Better yet, we have a very close relationship, and she's a parent-oriented child. Again, that we start to lose that a little bit later, but I have all these other memories that I created with her that are beautiful, fantastic memories. And she remembers a lot of it. Mom, do you remember when we went to the zoo? Mom, remember when we went to the butterfly pavilion with all of us? Do you remember that? Do you remember when Nan and Papa and Katie and Joshua and Jacob went to the butterfly pavilion all together, and it was so fun? And then we went and we heard a show for dinner. Do you remember that? Like, all of those things, like we created new memories. So no, she doesn't have the same memories as my other kids do. But when do any of us have the same memories as the next person, even if we experience the exact same thing? I took my son to a concert. Our experiences were different at the concert. We both had a good experience, but our experiences, the way that we remember them, are grossly different. And so I think about this time, this fear of missing out, like, but what if they won't get these new memories? We're sliding them. And then I go back to when I asked the girl, was prom worth it? No, the answer was a hard no. That is a hefty price to pay for a few positive experiences. And half the time they're not even positive. I actually didn't love prom. I thought it was terrible. I liked my date. He was a nice enough guy. We were friends. But I would have taken time exploring things on my own over a couple of hours at prom. So as you worry and as that anxiety comes up, are they going to miss out? I want you to think about what they're going to miss out on with you if you send them. And is that a price worth paying? All those hours in school where they're not getting enough recess, they're not getting enough exercise, they're not getting enough playtime. They're perpetually being compared to other students. They're being graded. Their self-esteems are being affected. Their self-worth, their identity, all of those things are being affected day in, day out, 6 to 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. Is that worth it? And I say no, it's not. That the time with you is far more important. And by the way, you can create new experiences for them. And by the way, they can still have some of those experiences. Last year, Joshua wanted to go to homecoming at the local high school, asked a girl from the school, got permission to go. He still has a homecoming experience. In many places, homeschooling groups get together and do dances and things like that for the teens. I did a couple of years ago. I put together a Regency era ball. I was like, I really wish that there could be a ball. We had several public school kids that showed up with dates. And even the male dates were like, this was way more fun than homecoming. This was way more fun than the things that we do in public school. I wish the public school would do things like this, right? So we can create different experiences. And in many cases, they don't have to miss out on those things. School sports in many states, kids don't have to miss out on school sports. They can still participate in them and be homeschooled or dual enrollment or whatever it is that you're worried that they're going to miss out on. You can, number one, either create a different memory, create an experience for them, or number two, they could still technically participate in many cases. I know that's not every state. I know there's some states that are really strict. And they're like, nope, no crossing. But even in the states that are like, no, sorry, you can't play soccer at the public school, the kids can still play club soccer. Like, it's not like they can never play soccer. And I say sending, that 16,380 hours is better spent with you. It's better spent where you're building, as Sarah Mackenzie says, this beautiful cathedral. Block by block, you're running this marathon with them. And when the time comes for them to leave the house, you don't have regrets of time lost because they spent 16,380 hours with a bunch of strangers, where you sent them to be educated by people you don't know with values. You have no idea what they believe or feel, but they're spent in your care, teaching them the values that you want to instill in them. Now, I know that there's people out there that would argue and say how selfish and all this stuff. Well, guess what? They're not your kids. They're my kids. If you want to worry about kids, have some yourself, right? Worry about your own kids. I got in a little bit of a Facebook argument last year with a guy who doesn't even have children, who was saying, it's wrong for you to teach values to your children. That's up to the schools to do those things. Really? Don't tell me how to raise my kids. Don't tell me what to do with my kids. Oh, wait, you don't have kids of your own, so you want to control other people's kids. Awesome. Yeah, no, not in my world. You're not taking my kids. You're not controlling my kids. 16,380 hours. You get to create new, beautiful, wonderful experiences for your kids. You send them to school, you don't get that time back. You don't get the formative years back, which are, before 3. We don't get that time back. We don't get learning to watch them learning to read. We don't get that back if they're sent to school. We don't get to watch that. Right? We don't get the time back. We don't get it back. So when you start to feel anxiety about missing out and that they're going to miss out on all these fun things at school, the question I ask you is, are those few hours of fun things worth it? Or is that too hefty of a price to pay for a relationship with your child, for a true education for your children? Is it worth it? I say no. But that's up to you to answer, and between you and your spouse to figure out and decide. I'll share a song in the comment section. I start out in the comments, in the show notes. It's called Slow Down. And it's a woman singing about watching her children grow up and wishing that she could slow the time down. You want regrets? Don't have the time. Last thought before I close up here. Again, I said it would be a little bit shorter of a podcast today, but it's been on my mind. A few years ago, my brother lost his wife to cancer. And at the eulogy, when he gave the eulogy, one of the things that he said was he remembers the first time that he met her. And he met her at this young singles activity and got her phone number and was just enchanted by her. And she lived close to campus. And so she walked home. And as he was leaving, he drove past her. And he had this thought, I wonder if she wants a ride. And he's like, no, that's too forward. And he let her walk home. And anyway, years pass, they end up getting married.
But at the eulogy, he tells that story that he saw her walking home, and he said, what I wouldn't give to have a few minutes with her. I just wish I would have said, can I give you a ride? Because then I would have a few more minutes with her. And what I wouldn't give to have just a little bit more time. We get 18 years and then they leave the house. And they go out in the world to make a place in the world and to make the world better and have families. And I, for one, don't want to look back on 16,380 hours and think I could have just had a little bit more time with them. So I want you to think about that the next time you're worried. Well, what if they miss out on prom? What if they miss out on the mother's makeover in kindergarten? Think about all the other memories that you could create with these beautiful babies. With those hours. That's my charge for you. Don't feel guilty. Let go of the fear of missing out. And make some awesome memories with your kids. Bring them home and then make beautiful magic memories. You got this, mamas and papas. You got this, grandmas and grandpas. You're doing better than you think you are. Go love on your kids. And make those 16,380 hours really count. We'll talk next week.
If you enjoyed this today, please like and subscribe. You could also join our private Facebook group at School to Homeschool or sign up for our newsletter at www.schooltohomeschool. Have a great day.